In this video, we are going to look at some exam questions about the topic genetics, and I'm going to go through and show you how to answer them. Before we start, I just want to introduce you to bug. I'm just going to write it down like this, bug. And it kind of is a strategy on how to read exam questions. And basically what we have to do first is box command words. So we have to look at the questions and find the command words which tell us what we're actually supposed to do. Then we have to underline keywords. And then finally we glance back at the question to see what it is actually asking us. We did already talk about bug a couple of times before in lessons, and I'm going to, while I read the questions, use this, and what I would like you to do is to also, while we go through the questions now, think about bug and which words would you box or underline. So we're going to start with a question about DNA structure. It says use words from the box to complete the sentences. So the command word here is complete. We have to complete the sentences below here, and we have to use the words from the box. This is not necessarily a keyword, but I am going to underline it because it is an important point which tells us that the words that we need to put in are actually in the box here. A DNA molecule consists of two coiled strands that form a, we've got empty and helix. So here they want to know the full name of the DNA structure, and they've already given us the word helix, and the word that needs to go before it is double helix. The strands are held together by bonds between the bases, and the bonds that hold the strands together in DNA are hydrogen bonds. A is a section of DNA molecule that codes for a specific protein, and what we could also say it's a section of DNA that codes for a specific characteristic or trait, and that would be a gene. Now the next question. Which two scientists, okay, so two scientists, important here, were the first to build a 3D model of a DNA molecule, so basically a 3D structure. Put a cross, that's our command words, that's what we're supposed to do, putting a cross in the box next to your answer. So which two scientists were the first to build a 3D model of a DNA molecule? And this is something you just have to know. And it was Watson and Crick. Now we're going to move on to the next question about alleles. Okay, so the diagram shows the genetic inheritance, okay, that's the first keyword here, genetic inheritance, of cystic fibrosis, that's another keyword, in a family. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder, it's a genetic disease caused by the CF recessive allele. So recessive allele is another important keyword here. We've got the family tree here that we can look at. We've got the parents who are both carriers. We have a child that has cystic fibrosis, two children that are carriers, and one child is cystic fibrosis free. Then the question is, what is an allele? So allele is the next important keyword here. Put a cross in the box next to your answer, and put a cross, that is our command word. Then what we are given as the options for an allele is a change in a chromosome. It can't be this, because this is actually what we would call a mutation, so it's not an allele, it's a mutation. Then a characteristic caused by a gene. It's also not that, because that's what we would call the phenotype. what we see on the outside. And the next one is an alternative form of a different gene, and the last one, D, an alternative form of the same gene. So they are quite similar, but an allele is always the alternative form of the same gene. We have two versions of the same gene, so the correct answer here is D. Now we're going to move on to the next question. It says both parents are carriers of the CF cystic fibrosis allele. So carriers and CF allele are important keywords here. State the term used to describe an individual who is a carrier and has both a dominant and a recessive allele. So the keyword here is state, and that kind of means as much as just write down or define. So we have to define the term. So the term used to describe an individual who is a carrier, again important keyword, it has both a dominant and a recessive allele. So if we wanted to put that into letters, if we have a dominant one, that would be like a capital letter, like a capital B, and recessive would be the lowercase one, lowercase b, so we'd have something that looks like this. And so we have two different alleles, and the name for two different alleles was heterozygous. That is a term for having the dominant and the recessive allele. And we're going to move on to B. Use the words from the box to complete the following sentences. So complete is the command word here that needs to be boxed. Use the words from the box, quite important. So we've got the words here if we're unsure what goes in. Then the first sentence says genes are found in structures called. So basically, what are the structures called that are long strands that have all the genes in them and the DNA in them, and that is the chromosomes. These are found in the of a cell, and they are found in the nucleus of a cell. Now we're going to move on to the Punnett square. Complete the Punnett square. So complete here is our command word. The Punnett square is our one important keyword to show how cystic fibrosis is inherited if both parents are carriers. Okay, so it's another important keyword. And we've got two marks here. So one mark is going to be to fill in the genes, the genotype of the father. The mother has already been done for us, and it says both are carriers. That means, like we see with the mother here, they have one healthy allele, so one healthy dominant allele, and the mother, because she's a carrier, she also has one cystic fibrosis allele, and this allele is recessive. So this is what the genes, the genotype look like if we have a carrier, and because both parents, it says both parents are carriers, so that means the father has the same. He also has one healthy dominant allele, and he has one recessive cystic fibrosis allele. And now we just have to do what we always do in Punnett squares. We combine those together, so we look at which letters are in the same rows and columns. So if we start here from the mother and the father, in the first one we get two dominant alleles, dominant healthy alleles. The next one we have from the father a healthy dominant allele, and from the mother one recessive cystic fibrosis allele. Down here we have the healthy dominant allele from the mother and the recessive cystic fibrosis allele from the father. And then in the last box we get two recessive cystic fibrosis alleles from each parent. Now the next question, so this is now before we move on, this is the second mark. So you would get 1 mark for this bit, that would be 1. And then filling this all out would be 1 also, so that would be your 2 marks. Now we're going to move on to the next question. Give the percentage, so give is your command word here, percentage chance of a child being a carrier of CF when both parents are carriers of CF. So now we need to look back at our Punnett Square and look at how many children are carriers. This one is a bit tricky. What we are not looking for is, you can see that there's also a chance for the child actually to have cystic fibrosis, but we are only looking for if we are looking for carriers, we are only looking for the heterozygous genotype, where we have a dominant healthy allele and a recessive cystic fibrosis allele. We can see that the chance here, we've got 2 carrier ones, and then we've got 2 that are either completely healthy or have cystic fibrosis, so it's 2 to 2. This means we've got 50% chance that we have a carrier. The last question, describe, is our command word, describe how cystic fibrosis can cause problems with the absorption of food and high oxygen in a person with this disorder. So we have to explain or describe how this causes problems when taking up oxygen and food. The first thing we need to say is actually, what does cystic fibrosis affect? What does it cause? And so our first bullet point, it affects the cell membranes and this leads to the production of too much mucus. So too much mucus is produced. Now this mucus covers certain organs. So mucus covers, for example, the lungs, but also the intestines in the digestive tract. So the mucus covers lungs and intestines. And this means now that because the lungs, the inside of the lungs and the intestines, I'm going to actually add mucus covers lungs and intestines on the inside. Because they are covered by the mucus on the inside, the oxygen and the food can't actually get through to be absorbed or taken in. So now we can say oxygen and food cannot be taken in. And that is all for these exam questions.